Welcome everyone. Hi, I'm Lisa Raftery. It's really wonderful to have you here at this Rosa final session of the conference in the day on bringing issues into the public consciousness and driving change for women and girls. So before I go into the sort of main part of this session, just a few little notes to share with you all on how we're going to run the session. So we're going to hear from our fantastic speakers who I'll introduce to you shortly. But we are going to open up for discussion after we've heard from our lovely speakers. And please do use the chat box to introduce yourselves and post questions. But if you want to ask any questions of our speakers, please use the Q&A. If there aren't too many of you, I can probably also take questions from the group. So do raise your little hand as well, and I'm happy to come to you and you can ask your question yourself. So we can work with that as we go along and see either way. You can use the Q&A or you can ask yourself. Okay, so we know that every advance for gender equality and women's rights has been achieved by bold, brave women, becoming informed, getting organised, mobilising others and taking action to tackle injustice and inequality head on. And we're really honoured to have two of these amazing women with us today to talk to us about how their campaigns have successfully raised issues into the public consciousness and driven change. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Tinuke Awe, who is a mother of two children, aged 4 and 2. She runs a social platform, Mums and Tea, aimed at connecting Black mums together. And it was here that she heard a lot of Black mums' birthing experiences that echoed her own traumatic experience. Along with her co-founder, Chloe, who runs Prosperities, an organisation focused on maternal well-being in Black and South Asian mums, they created the 5 Times More campaign, with the hopes of highlighting and changing the disparities within maternal health and Black women that Black women face in the UK. In 2020, 5 Times More launched the petition, Improve Maternal Mortality Rates and Healthcare for Black Women in the UK, which gained over 187,000 signatures. Their petition led to Black maternal health being discussed in Parliament for the first time in its history and changing the landscape of the discussion in the media and beyond. Tinuke and Chloe were named Forces of Change by British Vogue in 2021, and 5 Times More has been featured in a number of prominent newspapers and media, spreading the word of the campaign and keeping it at the forefront of everyone's minds. So very warm welcome to Tinuke, who I'm going to pass over to talk a little bit about her organisation before introducing Joeli.
Hello, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. It still doesn't feel real when other people like describe more and kind of what we've done, because I'm like, oh wait, that's us. So thank you. So 5 Times More, we are a grassroots organisation, and we are, as you mentioned, dedicated to highlighting and changing the maternal disparities that Black women face in the UK. I run it with myself and my colleague Chloe, that is she runs Prosperities, and like you said in the introduction, how it first started was I had approached Chloe after, you know, my own personal experience and hearing other Black women's experiences, and because of what she does supporting Black women when it comes to Black and South Asian mothers when it comes to maternal wellness and mental health outcomes, we just decided to, you know, first we wanted to just have an event. That event never happened. What we actually ended up doing was building a fully fledged campaign. So there are actually 3 parts to the campaign. We support women with our free resources and our information sheets and advice. We train staff and health professionals with our training, and we also are really passionate about lobbying the government. So I'll talk about, lobbying the government is something that, it's what first sort of brought us into the limelight, if you like. In 2020, our petition, like you said, went viral. So it was to improve Black maternal health care. And I remember we created a video, and we sort of, during the pandemic and after the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, the petition kind of got picked up and it just went viral. And within a week, we received 100,000 signatures, which led to it being debated in Parliament for the first time. So, even though Black women have had the highest risk of maternal death in this country and have done so for a very long time, this was the first time that this was actually brought up. So over since 2020, we've done a number of things trying to raise this in Parliament and trying to lobby it and getting it in the media, but I'm sure we can touch on that later.
Thank you so much, Tinuke. It's so fantastic to hear more about your work and to share that with others. And I know that we're going to have an opportunity to talk to you a bit more about that after we hear from Joeli as well. I also forgot in my excitement to start this session to say who I was. I mean, I said I was my name, but I forgot to also say that I'm a trustee for Rosa, which is why I'm here. So I'm going to now introduce Joeli. So Joeli Brearley is the founder of the charity and campaign group Pregnant Then Screwed, which she established in 2015 after her own experience of pregnancy discrimination. Her organisation is rewriting the narrative for mothers in the UK whilst working to end the motherhood penalty. Vogue named her as one of their top 25 influential British women who are shaping 2021 and beyond. She writes for The Telegraph, is the winner of the Sheila Mackenzie Campaigner of the Year 2021 award, the Northern Power Women Agent for Change award, is an Amnesty International human rights defender and a member of the United Nations Working Group, Women's Human Rights in the Changing World of Work. In January 2021, she took the government to court for indirect sex discrimination due to the way self-employed mothers were being financially penalised by the income support scheme. Her debut book, The Motherhood Penalty, How to Stop Motherhood Being the Kiss of Death for Your Career, was published by Simon & Schuster on the 4th of March 2021. Welcome, Joeli. It's so great to see you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so quick introduction. Yeah, as Lisa said, I'm Joeli from Pregnant Then Screwed. I do realise that you get screwed and then you get pregnant. I do have two children, so I understand how procreation works, but you'd be amazed at how many people feel that they need to tell me how procreation works on the internet. The title is purposefully provocative, and what we exist to do is to end the motherhood penalty, which is a term coined by sociologists to define the systematic disadvantages that mothers face in the workforce compared to their childless counterparts. So essentially, it's about the gender pay gap, and the gender pay gap isn't so much about gender at all. In actual fact, the pay gap between mothers and childless women is more than the pay gap between men and women without children. So you cannot talk about the gender pay gap without talking about motherhood and the fact that mothers repeatedly bash their heads against a brick wall when trying to have children and a career. And it was 7 years ago that I set up Pregnant Then Screwed, and it was after my own experience of pregnancy discrimination. I informed my employer that I was pregnant at 4 months, and the next day they sacked me by voicemail. And my employer was a children's charity. So it just goes to show that, no sector is immune from pregnancy and maternity discrimination. And, that was it. I was left jobless, penniless, didn't have a career, didn't know where my next income was going to come from. And it was really, really terrifying. And I tried to access justice and realized that the judicial system just really doesn't work for pregnant women and mothers. And so after that happened, I started attending parent groups and realized that there were so many stories from mothers about facing bullying, harassment, being made redundant, getting sacked, being demoted, all because they dared to have a baby. And so it was International Women's Day when I woke up and I thought, right, today's the day I'm going to do something about this. And I already had the name Pregnant Then Screwed. And I scooped my baby up out of his cot and we sat downstairs and I was sort of spoon feeding him porridge while teaching myself to use WordPress. And that afternoon, Pregnant Then Screwed was born. And it was initially just a website place for women to tell their stories anonymously. And I honestly thought that if I did that if I managed to expose these stories, that somebody would come along, you know, a knight on a horse and they'd rescue the day. They'd go, this is madness. Why is this happening? We've got to fix it. But obviously that didn't happen. And, you know, it was very naive of me to think that. And I realized that, you know, we have to save ourselves. And as these stories came in, people were asking for legal advice, and I'm not a lawyer. And I'd happened to meet a lawyer bizarrely through Mumsnet, which I'm actually not a member of, but I'd written a blog post for them and about my experience. And lots of people were telling me I obviously deserved to lose my job. And a lawyer was defending me and saying, no, this happens all the time. And so we met for a cup of tea in Manchester, Danielle Ayres, and I asked her if she'd provide some free legal advice to the women who were contacting me. And to my surprise, I think she'd eaten too much cake at the time. She said, yes, I will. And so it started off with her just making calls in the bath, you know, two calls a night, maybe out of work. And then last year we supported 5,000 women through that free advice line, and she still runs it. Obviously she doesn't do it from the bath anymore. We now have a full system and structure built around it. The organization has really built from scratch. For the first 3 years, we did it with no income whatsoever. And without any money, we managed to set up a free legal advice line. We managed to set up a mentor scheme to support women to take their employer to tribunal. We started campaigning and lobbying. We set up Pregnant Then Screwed in America, Spain and Sweden. We did a protest march in 2017 called March of the Mummies in 6 cities across the UK, which over 1,000 people came to, which I was absolutely astounded by. I thought it would just be me, you know, shouting in the rain. But and that got loads of media attention and was brought up in Prime Minister's questions. So it's really quite amazing what you can do with very little resource. But since then we have grown, and we're now a charity with 5 staff. We have 170 volunteers working for us. Last year we supported 80,000 women with free support and legal advice. And we help women secure £628,000 by taking legal action against employers, as well as doing lots of the campaigning work that we did during the pandemic and beyond, which I'm sure we'll come on to talk about.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joeli. It's fantastic to hear about just the full range of campaign tools you've used there to really kind of get this issue into the public consciousness. I mean, obviously this session is about how we bring issues into the public consciousness. And of course, you know, you two are fantastically wonderful examples of just how to go about doing that. And I wonder if we could explore that a bit more with you both. Before I kind of jump into the sort of questions and things that I've got here, does anyone in the audience have any questions for Tinuke or Joeli, or both? And if you do, feel free to put your hand up and I can come to you, or pop them in the chat box and I can read them out. Or I can start and I'll give you a chance to think. I'll do that. Okay, so I mean, it would be great to hear a little bit, and this is a question for both of you really. It'd be great to hear about what some of the challenges of getting public support for your campaigns has been. How did you connect with people? And how important was social media in this, for example? Don't know if I'm happy for either of you to answer that.
Tinuke, do you want to go?
So I think for us, it wasn't entirely difficult getting public support. we were all, as I said, we were both coming from places of, we were already working in the community. So we kind of had a head start, if you like. We were already working within the community, working with Black mothers. So it wasn't largely too away from what we already did when we started 5 times more. And because we already had that backing, it was easy for people to come on board and recognize that, okay, these are things that affect me as a Black woman and in the community. I'm happy to support what you are doing, because we see that, you know, there's a need for it, there's a need for a change. And social media has been imperative. It's been really, really, really important in terms of us spreading the message. I wear many hats within the 5 times more campaign, because it's just myself and Chloe, and as a social media manager, as well as managing the website and PR and all of this kind of thing. But I realized that through social media, we're able to reach so many people across the world. Even I was going to say across the country, but it's across the world. I would say largely part of our petition going viral. At first, we didn't have a video at first. We didn't even realize that the petition was going viral. I'll tell you a funny story behind that. I was pregnant, and then it was lockdown. And then I was about to have the baby, and we were like, actually, maybe we shouldn't, you know, it's COVID right now. Maybe we shouldn't really push this petition, because it looks like everyone's really worried about COVID. So we were like, okay, fine, we'll leave it until I have the baby, and we'll figure out what to do. Had the baby, and then after that, you know, George Floyd was murdered, and then the petition kind of got it really ran. People trying to find things to support, and our petition was one of those. And we're like, right, like we're at 1,000 signatures. I think we kind of need to do something to let people know, number one, that it's ours, and number two, that it's really important. So we created a video. And we asked a bunch of our friends and their children and everyone's grandma, everyone. We literally asked everyone to get involved and do us a video saying, I am 5 times more. And we put that together, and we put it on social media. And I think after that, people realized that we were the people behind the petition. And that was what was shared widely. Like literally, I think for that week or two, that was all I was seeing on social media, was that people reposting and resharing that video. And I think that we can largely attribute, you know, the fact that it went viral because we had such a strong campaign. Like that video was literally our campaign. So yeah, I think it's really important trying to build those relationships on social media and using social media to your benefit.
That's really fascinating, Tinuke, and particularly your point there about once you did that video and that was what went viral. People could see who you were and really connect with you and the campaign, and it's really, really great to be able to share that. Joeli, can I come to you?
Yeah, sure. So when I first started Pregnant and Screwed, it took a while for people to start posting their stories on the website, because they needed to trust me. This is, you know, something that was very personal to them, but also if they've been identified, it could pose a huge risk for them in terms of their career. And many of them had signed non-disclosure agreements, and so if they were identified, they could be sued and end up in a real mess. And so a big part of what I did in the first phase of Pregnant and Screwed was building that trust. So I was having calls with people to encourage them to post their stories, and you know, ongoing back and forth messages. And then eventually we got a slot on the Victoria Derbyshire show. God bless Victoria Derbyshire. Wish you know that show still existed. And then the story started flooding in as a result of that. But a really big part was building that trust with people, making sure they understood that they wouldn't be identified and that they could trust me with their story. And just like Tinuke said, I think a really important part of any campaign is firstly, you know, messaging everybody you've ever met, like everybody, and saying, how can you support me? What can you do? Who do you know? What can you give me? And that really made a difference, and lots of people stepped in and introduced me to people, to journalists, to other people, and that really helped as well. And then I drove people absolutely bananas through social media. So Twitter, I followed all female journalists that I could see were talking about women's issues, and then I would direct message them and tell them what we were doing. And again, that eventually worked. And Emma Barnett, when she was at the Telegraph, did some great stuff with us, talking about these stories publicly, and that was all through Twitter, just driving people completely mad. Social media has been absolutely fundamental to what we've done, and it is a very central part still to our delivery. It has its pros and cons, right? Like it you know, without it we wouldn't exist, but at the same time there's a lot of abuse through social media, and we certainly saw that during the pandemic, particularly when we were talking about vaccines for pregnant women. The abuse really ramped up, and it was, you know, quite serious abuse and quite scary abuse. And but it, you know, we've been very used to men in particular saying, oh, don't listen to these idiots, or criticizing what we're saying, and that sort of, you know, you can let that bounce with me. But when it's quite serious abuse, then it can really take its toll on you. The other thing to say about social media is that it's only a very small part of what Tinuke and I do. People think, you know, it's a huge part, but actually I would say it's about 5% really of what we do. We talk publicly about what we're doing to try and get people to join us, but actually behind the scenes, there's an enormous amount of work going on to get to that point where you're talking about it on social media. And there's no point in just being a social media campaign, because nobody's listening except the people that are interested in that subject. You've got to be in government, you know, rustling feathers, and be in the media and be out and about talking to people constantly in order to make that change happen. The other thing that is a bit of a challenge is when you're on social media, and when you what Tinuke and I both do is we are quite central to what we're doing, rather than being a faceless institution, which what a lot of charities are. People know who we are, and they know our stories because we have lived experience of the stuff that we're talking about. And that builds trust and means people do feel that they know you when they're talking to you. But it also can be a problem because people's expectations of you can be really high, and they can sort of, you know, I get messages all the time from people asking us to step in on all sorts of issues, anything that affects pregnant women and mothers. And we are a tiny team. We haven't got the resources to do that. And when you say, I'm sorry, we haven't got the time or the resources to do that, people can get quite upset. So although it means that we have a following, and that is critical if you're going to campaign, people need to trust you, then you need people supporting you and following you. At the same time, it can be quite challenging and exhausting and taxing because you are so central to what you're doing.
Yeah, just to come in on that as well, I think to your point about social media and the good and the bad, I think because we are the faces of, you know, our campaigns and our organizations and what we're doing, people can feel there's no boundaries sometimes. And so people can feel like, you know, really over entitled to speaking to you, or like you said, wanting support and expecting that support. And because, you know, they assume that there's loads of us running the campaign, and actually we're very small and we don't have those resources. People do feel quite upset. But yeah, there is that sort of a little bit of a negative side whereby people just maybe a little bit over familiar or expect a lot from us, and we're like, hey, we're two mums, we're just like you know, we're like, give us a chance.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important that you're both highlighting some of those negative points. And I think for anyone who's looking to start out in sort of trying to raise and bring some issues into the public consciousness, it's good that you're sort of sharing that side of it as well, so people can be a bit more prepared about how to handle those kinds of situations. I'm conscious that we have got a question from Joe in the audience here that I wanted to put to you both, which was, what was the most impactful way of engaging with supporters? So if I come to you, Joeli, first for that one.
Yeah, sure. We so most of the work we had done was online. So it was the website and it was social media until we did March of the Mummies. And that was the big protest that we did. And that brought people together. And protesting is so critical to a well-functioning democracy. It's such a critical part of any campaigning, in my opinion, because without it, people feel disenfranchised. They feel that, and they get angry. You know, they just don't feel like they have a voice. But when you find a way to bring people together and to literally get out in the streets and scream and say, we've had enough, that really builds a sense of agency amongst those that are impacted. And it turns people from bystanders into activists and into campaigners, and that eventually changes society. And although protests, you never see a protest and immediately everything changes, of course it doesn't. The long-term changes are enormous. And obviously Black Lives Matter, the protesting and the work that Black Lives Matter have done, you can see that it's made a difference, that anger, that activism has started to change things. And so we did this in 2017 with the protests, and it just brought people together. And we still hear from people today that they made friends there, and they're still friends now. The impact of it was massive in terms of media attention. It got 317 pieces of media coverage. It was raised in Prime Minister's questions as a direct question to Theresa May. Before that, we sort of just been, on social media going, will somebody listen to us? And then we did that, and it suddenly felt like, oh, okay, people are listening. And, still today, people say the first time I came across you was March of the Mummies. And we're doing it again this year on October the 29th, now in 10 cities across the UK. We already have 4,000 people sign up to attend. And we expect to make a massive, massive stink off the back of it. So, yeah, without a doubt, the protesting.
Amazing. Thanks, Joeli. Tinuke, have you got anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I would say definitely in the early days, in terms of impact, it would be our 5 times more selfie. Because through our 5 times more selfie, we were encouraging people to have those really difficult discussions. I mean, this was at first before 5 times more was 5 times more, before the petition and everything else. We were largely just encouraging people to engage and tell us their experiences and tell us their stories, and tell us, what had happened to them. And everyone got involved. There were so many uses of the hashtag. So with the 5 times more selfie, obviously at the time, Black women were 5 times more likely to die. It's now 4 to 5. But yeah, there were 5 times more. So we asked people to take a selfie like this with their hand up, as to represent 5 times more, but also to represent, stop, that we want this to stop. And what we were asking people to do was, speak about their experiences and continue the discussions on social media. And we got a lot of, women who felt that previously felt that their voices didn't matter, and that their experiences were untold and unheard, and nobody cared about, were coming and in their droves, really, and sharing their experiences. And I think that was really powerful to see that we were able to and I think to kind of fast forward to earlier, actually a couple of months ago, to our report. It's almost like a bigger, more amplified version of the 5 times more selfie. So last year, when we launched the questionnaire, we had 1,300 people respond. Black women especially respond. Even being told, oh, Black women don't fill out surveys, they don't do research, we're missing Black women's experiences. To have that, such a huge amount of women respond back, literally giving us so much information about their birthing experiences, and being able to put that in a report and say, here you go, put that out into the world. That was really powerful as well. Sorry, it's saying my internet.
No, we can hear you. Your picture has frozen, but we can hear you though, which is
sorry. It's saying it's unstable, so I might take my video off and come back again.
Yeah, sure. No, it's fine. No, thank you so much, Tinuke. And I think, like you said as well, it's how you engage. Sometimes people kind of are reliant on certain ways of engaging with people and kind of reaching people, but actually it's how you do that, and how you do that with the particular people you're trying to reach. So I think it's great to share that. But we have got a few more questions, which I wanted to make sure we had a time to ask. Joeli, you mentioned actually, and this is very relevant and related to what you said before about what goes on behind the scenes, that there's a lot goes on behind the scenes. And actually one of the questions is about what are the bits that we can't see? What work is going on in the background, that to kind of really generate, the work that you're doing to really build these issues into the public consciousness? What is some of that work going on in the background that you could share?
A big part of our work is talking to MPs and talking to parliamentarians. And I mean, hustling, it's a lot of hustling. And we are being listened to by MPs and by parliamentarians now, because they realise that we are the voice of working mothers. We are really well connected to pregnant women and mothers. And so if they really, really want to know what's happening on the ground, then they need to talk to us. And so obviously, in order to supply that channel of information up to the people that can influence the change, we also need to be doing a lot of work collecting data, collecting stories, talking to mums on the ground about what's happening. And so, that is a big chunk of our work. We're filling in consultations and evidence sessions that come out from Parliament. And we are talking to the DfE, talking to BEIS, civil servants, and then having meetings with MPs and eventually having meetings with ministers. We are talking to companies a lot of the time about their own policies and trying to influence them to have better working practices for pregnant women and mothers. We do lots of surveys and do lots of data crunching so that we have access to really good quality data that can influence these conversations. And all of that is enormously time consuming. And obviously, as well as that, we also run these services that last year supported 80,000 women. So it's a lot to do with a very small team of 5 people. But I mean, it's absolutely critical if you really want the change. What we do is deal with both the symptoms of a system, a labour market that doesn't work for mothers, but we also want to eventually change that system. So it's a mix of the campaigning, which hopefully eventually changes the system, but also dealing with the symptoms of that symptom as well.
Thank you so much, Joeli. Yeah, I really hear you on the hustling side. Tinuke, have you got anything you'd like to share and add?
So sorry, you were all frozen, so I'm going to try and see if this works. Can you see me again? Okay, yeah, thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, no, I agree with everything Joeli has said. It's a lot behind the scenes. It's to be fair, social media is a very, very small chunk. We get a lot of emails from women, from various organizations, from MPs, from loads of people that need either our advice or want to have a chat or a catch up or see how they can help us or see how we can help them. And there's a lot. So that in itself, the admin side of it is very, very heavy. We have our training, so we train health professionals across, well, at the moment it's across Southeast London and in Birmingham, and a few trusts, kind of sporadically across the country. So that is quite time consuming again. So they're 2 hours sessions, and you've got the follow-up beforehand, you've got the follow-up after. Again, a lot of admin based, quite heavy work there. We also are talking to a lot of women all the time. It's really important that we are having these conversations, and people know that they I guess people send us their experiences, and we want to help as best as we know that we can. But again, like we said, we are mothers, ourselves. So sometimes it's, you know, knowing actually maybe this is something we can't take on, we might have to signpost elsewhere, we might have to maybe ask another organization to chime in and help, because it's just beyond our remit. So yeah, there's quite a few experiences that we've had that we're just like, actually this is quite a lot. we're probably going to have to maybe ask, you know, someone else to help. But yeah, I definitely echo a lot of what Joeli was saying. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that a lot of people just don't see. And we're mothers, you know, that's a job in itself. And I think there's this expectation that, you know, because we are working on our businesses, well, we do this actually, technically we're supposed to be doing this part-time, but it's our full-time jobs, as well as having two very young children. There is so much going on there behind the scenes, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work trying to keep up with everything.
Absolutely. And thank you very much. And actually we've got another question from the audience, which is great, from Colour. Hi Colour. She's saying, how easy, hard has it been to get your policy and influencing work funded? Which I think is a fantastic question. It was actually on my list of questions to ask you as well. Joeli, do you want to go with that?
Sure. Really hard. We just don't have the infrastructure in the UK to fund campaigning and social justice, and it's a real shame, because without campaigns like 5 times more and without Pregnant Then Screwed, we don't have a well-functioning democracy. You know, this is absolutely critical to society. And as I said before, without these sorts of campaigns, people feel disenfranchised and ultimately angry, and then you have unrest and all sorts of problems with your democracy. People don't feel politically engaged, and so democracy fails as a result. And in the UK, we really fail campaigners, I think, compared to, if you look at America, that infrastructure really exists in terms of philanthropy for social justice. And not only do they fund campaigning, they also support new leaders, because with campaigners, the majority of them have lived experience of what they're campaigning on. They campaign on behalf of their communities, perhaps. They're not necessarily people who've been in leadership roles, very unlikely to have access to money to support the campaigning. And so you need both strands. You need not only the resources, i.e. the money, because campaigning doesn't come for free. You know, if you really want people to dedicate their time to this, to proper real change, they need to be paid, they need to eat. But also, you know, the protest that we're doing in October, that's going to cost us 40 grand, £40,000. It's taken us 5 years to save up to do this. Nobody's giving us any money to do that. We have saved up our hard-earned cash as an organisation through, you know, doing other activities to pay for this. That just wouldn't happen in America. That'd be funded. You get the funding for it. You get and you get training for leadership training as well. You get connected up with other people. We do have some trusts and foundations that will fund campaigning. Rosa, of course, being one of them. Esme Fairbairn also will do some funding, but with the majority of these big funds that do campaigning, of which there are very, very few, I will say, there's been some research on this, and I think it's like 8% of funds, trusts and foundations will fund campaigning. They want to see that you've already got an income of about £100,000, that you're already a charity and you're already constituted, that you already have a board of trustees, that you already have all this stuff in place that as grassroots campaigners, you're never going to have. And so there's just a real barrier to getting there, to getting to a stage where you really can concentrate on being a campaigner and creating the change that's so necessary. So I think we really do fail people in the UK.
Absolutely. Tinuke?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's been very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. As I said, this is obviously our supposed to be a part-time job, but we essentially work on it full-time, even though we really shouldn't, because we're not getting the money to, and the money that we do have has been largely through donations from people, and if not for that, I think it probably would have been very, very difficult to continue 5 times more. There's been a number of times where we just both want to just give up, because we're like, how can we even keep the roof over our heads if there's literally no money? And it's not that we haven't tried certain just criteria in general, like Joeli mentioned. Certain criteria are just impossible for us to fulfill as such a small grassroots organization. They want you to have already had, you know, such and such amount of money and have certain infrastructures in place, which I understand, but I think there has to be a little bit of understanding and just a little bit of leeway for maybe certain, you know, organizations like ours, where we know we can do the work. We know we're doing the work that potentially people, you know, have been trying to do for a long time and have not been able to do. Trying to reach these women that they've not been able to reach, and we've done that in a heartbeat with no money. So imagine what we could do with a bit of money behind us. Like our report, completely unfunded. We did that off of our own backs and with the support of countless Black women offering their time. We shouldn't have to expect Black women to offer their time for free. We didn't cause this problem. We didn't create this problem, yet we are having to be a part of that solution for free. Other organizations were paid a lot of money via other, you know, funding streams to do it, and didn't get a lot of responses specifically for Black women. You know, we're hitting areas that organizations just haven't been able, other organizations haven't been able to for years, and yet it's a struggle to survive. It's really, really tough. It's really tough. And I think there definitely has to be, people have to rethink how campaigns and grassroots organizations are funded, because, you know, so many issues and so many things we've been able to bring to the fore. It's just been because we are so passionate about it. But passion and it doesn't pay the bills.
No, absolutely not. No, but thank you very much, both of you, for sharing that insight, because I think, you know, obviously you're absolutely right. There is no real infrastructure here, and very few funders do support campaign work. But I think if there are any funders on the call, or any organisations working with funders, I know that Rebecca and the rest of the Rosa team would be really happy to share learning and information about the Voices from the Frontline programme that Rosa runs, which does fund campaigning, and it doesn't have all these different barriers in place around accessing that. You don't need to be a 100k turnover and various things like this. This is very much about generating that grassroots and supporting those grassroots campaigns to grow and make change. So do come and talk to Rebecca and the Rosa team. Rebecca, I don't know if you want to say anything here about that, or you're on mute.
Sorry, is that right? Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry. I think it's so interesting listening to both speakers, and what's very striking about what Tinuke has just said is about the way that we still expect women to work for free, and that this notion of campaigning is still and you know, Joeli said it as well, that there's just still an element of women's work, whether it's changing the world or caring for children, or whatever they're doing, that there's just an expectation that women will do it for free. And it's dangerous, because it does, as Joeli's talked about, it really stops us from having a healthy functioning democracy if we're dependent on women's unpaid labour to make it work. So as a funder, I'm very proud of the work that Rosa does, and I really do wish more funders would recognise the importance of funding campaigning, influencing, lobbying work, which is messy. You know, it's messy. It doesn't have, you know, a beautiful ending where you can say that you worked with 5 women and their lives were different at the end of your work. It could take 25 years, you know, and even then you can be in a Roe versus Wade situation where everything goes backwards and you have to go forward, and it still needs funding. So I'll leave my remarks there, but it's really interesting and very striking.
Thank you, Rebecca. Absolutely. I've noticed that Faustina has her hand up. Faustina, did you want to come in?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I'm really feel for what's been said, and same here for the Chinese women in Peterborough. We are doing so much and we've been pulled all directions. There's just like 3 of us. I just came out of hospital because of burnout. It's just so hard work. But I have to say we're very grateful for Rose's support, in the last few years. That's our main supporter and founder. We're very grateful. There's so much to do. But just, as a mother, I have to do the school runs, I have to do the cooking, I have to take the lessons, I have to go meetings, and everyone say, oh, there's a meeting, we want to be part of it. A lot of times they, feel like being used and abused as, oh, okay, we tick the box of minority ethnics on our attendee list. Every time I try to make a stand and speak up, and then there's not much outcome out of it. When it comes to the funding, it always goes to the big organizations. For us, it's just like, the discussion's done and it's dealt with, and then we hear nothing. It always happens like this, and I've tried so hard to work on this, to have a voice for the Chinese women. It's just so hard. Yeah.
Thank you, Faustina, and I'm so sorry to hear you've been so unwell. I hope you get well soon. But absolutely, thank you for sharing that, and absolutely right, of course. I can see that Dorcas has her hand up. Do you want to come in, Dorcas? You're still on mute, Dorcas.
It's just listening to all the people that are spoken. It's very interesting, and it's nice to see that is across the country you have similar story. Because in Bradford, Peacemaker International Project was the first organization in the country to launch the FGM campaign from practicing community. And we are happy that Rosa supported us, supported the project, because we set up both agency since 2014 in Bradford that embraces the local authority, the police, and voluntary sector, and across the city. But we need somebody that can build on what Rosa have done. So for the past 3 years, we didn't have any fund, but we continue running it for voluntarily. So, and that is, probably Rosa can, try to, I know there was something a few years ago that the Rosa did in educating other funders to be able to be simple. Because what I find out is that when you apply for the fund locally, because in Bradford, Black people have no political representative at all. So, and sometimes before you have the information, is dead already. So, but we are happy at the local level that the community action, that as an infrastructure organization, and now after the review of the Bradford Assembly, which was appalling, they are now restructured to make sure that all the voluntary organizations are well supported, including the new organizations. And Joel, I sympathize with what you have gone through, because I went through the same thing a few years back, but not in the UK, when I was forced to change my name, that unless you change your name, you will not be qualified for maternity leave. So, but you think that in this century, and also in the Western world, that will not happen. But the way women has been treated generally, when you are leading an organization, is appalling, regardless of whatever community you are from. I will stop now. In the Bradford BD5, when we had the Trident, they did the research and they find out that many community centers are men-led, and they are not interested in anything that relating to gender violence. And that is a good example of what is going on across the district. There is a need of changing in attitude, and also the way we are bringing up our children, right from the to change the issue of gender violence and the way women has been treated. We need to start from us as an individual in bringing our children up the right way, not to say because you are a man, you are a boy, go and watch football. You girls, come to me in the kitchen. We need to make sure right from the beginning of their life, we teach them that both boys and girls must learn how to cook, must learn how to look at the house and how to take their family. Thank you very much.
Quite
Very
right too. Quite right, Dorcas. Quite right too. Absolutely. I'm certainly making sure my son knows how to cook. But absolutely excellent points, and thank you for raising them. And I think you're absolutely right, of course, that you know, Rosa and the team and other funders who are doing, you know, fantastic work can do more to educate other funders, and I know that is something that Rosa does do, and you know, has plans to do in the future as well. And of course, absolutely right about you know, bringing more women's voices into decision making, places of decision making, to make sure that women's issues and needs are being taken into account. Joeli and Tinuke, I don't know if you wanted to sort of come back on any of the points that have been raised by Dorcas or Faustina at all.
Yeah, is it okay to talk? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure, of course, Faustina. Did you want to add something?
So I forgot to say, I also represent the Peterborough Moms UK group, which I founded since I became a first-time mom. I'm still first-time mom, just one daughter. Like in 2013, we have 5,000 members who are the moms in the city. They're all in Peterborough, and they are raising the future generation of the city and the country. We've been doing that voluntarily for so many years, never had any sort of funding. It's just like we're doing it, we're collecting mums because we feel like we want to, we need to. There's a cause that we want to do. I'd like to find out more about the marching mums information, because I'm very interested to hear about that, because all that you talk is something that I'm passionate about. So just I forgot to mention about this earlier. I'd like to find out more. Thank you.
Thanks, Faustina. Joeli?
Yeah, March of the Mummies, it'll be on the 29th of October. So it's in 10 cities across the UK. The closest to you, Faustina, will be London. And to find out more about it, if you just go on our website, so our website is pregnantthenScrewed.com, and all of the information is on there, so you can sign up to attend any of the marches that works for you, or if you just want to email us about it and we can send you some info to send out to your community, that would be wonderful. So just drop us an email on hello.
I'd like to share it to my group, in the Peterborough Mums group.
Yeah, so if you want to email us, it's hello@pregnantthenScrewed.com. Make sure you get your T's right in the middle, because there's 2 T's. And but yeah, just go on the website as well, and you can find lots of information on there. We'd love to have you join us. So yeah, just get in touch.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. So I'm just really conscious of time. We've got 5 more minutes. That's right, isn't it, Rebecca? We've got 5 more minutes till we finish. Yes. So just, I mean, a final question I can see from Anna Milne here in the box, asking, just following on from Joe's question, what have you found to be the most impactful way of engaging with those who don't currently support you and whose opinions you want to change? So obviously there's going to be people out there who don't support you and you're like, okay, whatever, but there's people out there who you really want their opinion to change. So I don't know, Joeli or Tinuke.
Okay, go on. Is she still here?
I'm still here. No, I'm still here. Hello. It's a really good question. I think for us, we've been quite fortunate in that we actually not come across anyone who's sort of refuted, you know, the campaign, or who doesn't support us in any way, because I guess for us it's the data is quite clear, and it has been for a very long time. It's not something you can argue with. What we campaign about, you cannot argue with the stats and the facts and the figures and what is actually happening. So for us, we've actually been fortunate enough to not have anybody come against us, maybe directly. I think maybe it's a few articles here and there that we may have, spoken about our experiences. We might have people saying, oh, well, this happens to white women too. But again, my answer for that is always, but the statistics have been this way for a very long time. You can't argue with the data, and you can't argue with the facts that Black women are overrepresented in the data when it comes to maternal mortality. So I'm not disputing the fact that this happens to white women, to Chinese women, to Asian women, to all women. I'm not disputing that, but those statistics speak for themselves. We don't have to say or do much to convince people on that. So yeah, I think it might be a bit different from Joeli's experience though.
Go on, Joeli. Yeah.
I mean, I absolutely agree with Tinuke. The only way you deal with people, sorry. The only way that you deal with people who disagree with you is data, because that's, it's a fact, and forget feelings. Here's a fact for you. But I used to spend a lot of time thinking I needed to try and change people's minds, because I thought otherwise I'm just preaching to the converted, and actually the only way we'll change people's minds is by having conversations with those people that disagree with you. I've stopped doing that. It's a waste of my time, and instead I'll work with every type of media. So I'll work with the Daily Mail, and I'll work with the Sun, and I'll work with those newspapers whose readers are less likely to agree with what we're saying, because they reach that audience, and those are the people's minds we want to change. But I will not engage with people one-on-one who just say to me, no, that's nonsense, no, I disagree with you, because I'm like, you're wasting my time, you're not even going to listen, can't be bothered. So our aim is always to get the data so that we have the facts, and just to keep talking about the facts, and to work with the people that want to work with us, to work with the people that have a grasp and go, okay, yeah, this is a problem and we need to change it, not to work with the people who just go, you're talking nonsense, and it's not a thing, because they can sling the hook, to be honest.
Well put, Joeli, well put. Well, I'm conscious we're now down to our very last minute, so really I think it's over to me to sort of say, and just to round up really, and just say, look, in these times where not even the rights we have already fought for and won are not safe, I'm even more thankful and acutely aware for the need for bold and brave change makers like Tinuke and Joeli here. And for the need for us women, funders, policymakers and campaigners to be supporting them. So thank you so much to Joeli and Tinuke for your amazing work. And thank you all of you for coming to this session today. Have a wonderful rest of day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.